This is the moment when we must reform health care so that we can build a new foundation for our economy to grow.
Well, that was the sales pitch, but according to a new report released this week by the Federal Reserve, Obamacare may be doing exactly the opposite. More than 18% of businesses say they are hiring fewer workers because of the law, only 3% saying it's helping add jobs. So, Sabrina, is all this going to get better or worse?
Oh, it's going to get worse for decades. Look, this is not going to work because central planning in any form, healthcare or otherwise, simply is not effective. Look, the National Small Business Association just came out with analysis of its own. It said that more than a third of small businesses are putting off hiring because of Obamacare. 91% said that costs have gone up, and they've gone up sizably from about $600 per worker to over $1,100 per worker per year. So, I mean, the effects are dramatic, and they're going to go on for decades.
Rick, the president said it was going to help grow the economy. In fact, it's helping to slow the economy.
Yeah, I have to say, it won't surprise you. I didn't have quite the same interpretation of the report that you might have. Look, I mean, I was a little bit surprised, the huge numbers that said it had no impact, up in the 85–90%. Secondly, if you're going to make the argument that it's making it worse, that is at odds with the report that showed improvement over the last quarter when they did the same kind of a survey. Finally...
Hold on, let me just jump in there. It was a net loss of jobs. I mean, 18% of those surveyed said they were hiring fewer workers. That's a net loss of jobs.
And what?
So it means a slower economy.
That they weren't, so it doesn't necessarily.
But it's still a net loss of jobs. It means fewer jobs.
It means that 18% said they hired fewer. But how do you know that the other 80% didn't hire more? Because if you look at the overall numbers.
No. Hold on a second. Rick, the point is, Rich, is that 18% said they are cutting jobs. This is to Rich Karlgaard. Only 3% said they were hiring more. 78% said no change. So there is a 15% net loss of jobs. That's clear. That's a loss of jobs.
Why was the overall better?
Go ahead,
yeah,
Rich.
and it shows up in unemployment rates, which are in the mid-6s, and the underemployment, which is even worse because a lot of people are working 28 hours a week or less so that they don't burden their employers with Obamacare costs. And this is holding back the economy, particularly small business. Small business has just not really shown up in this economic recovery, which is now 5 years and 2 months old.
And they're the ones that are hurt the most by these changes. Now, John, there are costs as well, Rich alluded to, and we've got specifics on that, the costs going up to the workers themselves. The premiums, according to these surveys, and again, this is by the Federal Reserve. They know what they're doing. They're nonpartisan. Premiums are going up 88%. Deductibles, well, excuse me, 88% of those say the premiums are going up. 91% said deductibles are going up, and 64% said the copays are going up. So they all agree that the costs of Obamacare are really putting a penalty on the workers.
Well, of course it is. Let's remember, labor is a cost. So if you raise the cost of hiring workers, you're going to some degree get less of it. Also, Obamacare is focused on lowering the cost of health care. That means the government is involving itself in the pricing mechanism. When it does that, it blunts price signals, and it leads to higher costs for health care. So that's the bad news. This is obviously going to fail. It's going to hurt the economy. The good news is that Obamacare is dying of its myriad contradictions. But I think within a few years, we're not going to recognize the law, so stripped will it be of all the bad ideas within it.
Well, we'll have to see about that. But in the meantime, Bill, is Obamacare helping or hurting the economy?
Well, I'm not a fan of Obamacare, but I don't agree with Sabrina that things are going to get worse and worse and worse. I think most of the damage has been done. Already we've had businesses, as Rich said, cutting back workers from 40 hours to 28 so they're not covered. We have already had businesses saying, we'll just have to pay the penalty. We won't have health care for our workers. And other businesses which are jacking up the premiums on their own
So you don't think it's going to get worse? It's been bad, but it's going to stay the same.
It's not going to get
worse. Rick, what do you say?
Well, yeah, I got to address this cost issue because I've been a small business owner. I cannot remember 1 year prior to the passage of Obamacare where my health care costs didn't go up. Folks, this was happening long before we ever heard of Obamacare.
Hold on a second, but the promise was that the costs would go down, that this would decrease the prices. 88% said they're increasing the prices, Sabrina.
Yeah,
Sabrina.
and what about and how do we calculate the lack of productivity that is coming as a result of this? I mean, one of the numbers I found interesting is that small businesses are now spending an average of 13 hours a month and over $1,200 on the administrative side of dealing with Obamacare. That is a tremendous loss of productivity, and that will, in fact, have a big impact on the economy and job losses.
And, Rich, since the workers are spending more on health care, they're going to be spending less on buying stuff from companies. That could hurt the economy, right?
Yeah, it hurts capital equipment purchases and all kinds of stuff. The other thing that Obamacare does is the symbolism of it, because it was so badly managed, and yet the government won't hold itself accountable, and yet it changes the law all the time. You know, it's just paralyzing a lot of businesses. Things feel really out of control from Washington.
All right, that's got to be it. That cheeseburger you're about to eat for lunch, well, guess what?